In this video, I travel to the north of Scotland to visit the ancient Cairn of Get, also known as Garrywhin. I uncover the secrets of this 5,000-year-old Neolithic tomb and reveal how it might have looked in its prime. And here we are, Garrywhin, or the Cairn of Get. Let's see what we find. Right, I hope you can hear me and see me, and that I might even be in focus for a change. I've walked a few minutes up from the road, and although we have to remember that Neolithic people wouldn't have arrived here by car, it's kind of interesting that I've gone up a couple of terraces. I'm now on a level part that's quite boggy, crossing a boardwalk, and then ahead of me is another terrace that leads up to where I believe the cairn will be. Just have to cross a stile. So here's the next rise behind me, and a little bit of autumnal sunshine is starting to break through. It's an otherwise lovely silvery sky. So I've arrived at the chambered cairn on the terrace, and as I thought, the views have opened up again, and behind me there is the sun reflecting from the surface of the Moray Firth, and on a clear day I'm sure that you would see across there as far as the coastline of Aberdeenshire. So this is quite a spectacular location. So this is Garrywhin, also known as the Cairn of Get. It's a Neolithic chambered cairn, and the remains of those chambers can be seen just behind me here. It's at least 5,000 years old, if not a little bit older. Dating is a real problem for sites like this. We have very few dates for chambered cairns like this in the north of Scotland. How do we begin to think about how this place may have been used, and perhaps even begin to approach what it might have meant to the people who made it? I think a helpful way into this is to look carefully at what survives today. The mound or cairn at Garrywhin today just looks irregular and covered in turf, but underneath the surface there is actually quite a defined structure. In common with quite a few Neolithic cairns in the far north of Scotland, this is what's known as a horned cairn. And horns are architectural features consisting of almost like arms of dry stone walling which extend from the main body of the cairn. There were 4 here in total, 2 at what we could call the front, which flank the entrance into the passageway leading through to the chamber. But there were also 2 more at the other end of the cairn, where there is no passageway. It might be the case that these horns defined almost like an arena for activity. And perhaps at this end of the cairn, this alcove may have been a place where people paused outside the entrance to the monument, or perhaps even as a prelude to stooping down and crawling along the passageway into the centre. I'm at the passageway entrance, and this would have originally been roofed, perhaps around about this kind of height. So the only means of entering the chamber behind me would have been to quite literally crawl along in a very uncomfortable posture. So let's walk into the chamber. First of all, passing through the entrance stones. Now I'm not going to go on my hands and knees. In this case, we'll just walk through. Here's where the passageway gradually opens up. And here are the first of the two orthostats, which define a transition into this wider space known as an antechamber. And then beyond this are these two fantastic orthostats through which I have to squeeze to enter into the chamber itself. If we move back here, we can look back out through the entrance. Now here in the chamber, we can see that the builders of this structure didn't make life very easy for themselves. At the bottom of the walls are a series of large irregularly shaped slabs, like this example here, which is almost a triangle. And this meant that the courses of walling would have had to have carefully been fitted around it. But above that, it's possible to see how these horizontal slabs start to oversail one another, gradually narrowing in until the chamber roof came together above my head and was closed by a large slab, or perhaps series of slabs. Now, I mentioned architectural devices, and in particular this portal created by the two large slabs at the entrance into the chamber. But look at the shapes of these stones. They didn't just pick any old block of rock found out in the landscape. I think these have been carefully selected and brought to this location. The reason why I think that is, look at the angles at the top of both of these stones and the sort of symmetry between them to either side of the passageway axis. And then there's also this concave surface here and a similar form here, which creates this curved portal. It's not just a straight edge. And not only is this an interesting shape to pass through, but it serves as a device to frame the large stone on the far back wall of the chamber. And I think this stone too was chosen for its shape. It's distinct to the others in the chamber, which have squarer tops. When it was excavated, the antechamber and the main chamber at Garrywhin were found to contain human remains. There were also animal remains and artifacts, and quite a lot of the bones had been burnt, or at least partially burnt. Now, those associations with death, or the transformation between life and whatever lay beyond in the minds of Neolithic people, that transaction was undertaken in a building which itself is transformational. You would enter the passageway from perhaps daylight into darkness. You have to change the way you move, and you stoop or you crawl. It's uncomfortable. The temperature changes as you enter the passageway. Where roofs survive, we can still experience this today. And then as space opens up, you have a growing awareness of a change in not just the light and the space, but in sound as well. Work that I've done within better preserved or reconstructed monuments like this suggests that they can make present some quite extraordinary acoustic effects, and they can include resonances which sound otherworldly. And of course, the effects of light coming in through that narrow entrance would illuminate with natural daylight parts of the interior, while other parts to either side, behind these stones for example, would remain almost in complete shadow. The way in which you experienced this structure in the Neolithic very much depended on whether you had access to the interior. If you remained outside, you would have relatively little understanding of what was happening within. You couldn't see through, or not clearly anyway, and any sounds that emerged are distorted and filtered by the massive stonework. Whereas if you did come into here, your world is transformed in a way which wasn't reproduced in many places in the Neolithic world. And in a sense, perhaps that lends significance to this being not only a place of transformation between life and death, but also maybe a venue within which the living themselves could journey into other worlds or dimensions.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to stay up to date with my ongoing archaeological adventures.